It is March 20th, 2019. We're gonna call the school committee meeting to order. However, we do not have a quorum this evening to be able to discuss in detail or make decisions or take any votes on any action. Yet the purpose of this evening's meeting is to allow our superintendent and our finance director to be able to share with us the updated version of the fiscal year 2020 budget, school budget. This is not the final, this is still draft, but there are two elements that those of you who were watching last week, our school committee meeting, may remember. We had a technology audit that was presented, and we also found out that the shared services position for facilities that we have been using the last couple of years or so will now again be separated between the town and the schools. So that changes how much money we need to have in the fiscal 2020 budget. So with all those changes, we'll just let Adam and Cheryl go through their updated draft. On Monday, the 25th, we have our school committee meeting, but prior to that, we have a public hearing to share probably almost exact same budget that we're going to be hearing about this evening, unless there are some changes between today and Monday that Adam makes to the budget. So with that, I will turn it to you guys.
Right, so as you stated, Emery, we had two significant changes to the budget. One, which we knew about, which was the implementation of the technology audit, which was presented last meeting. And the second was the termination of the shared services for facilities, which meant that we had to revise the facilities portion of the budget to accommodate adding facilities, maintenance, and some of the materials and supplies that are needed for that. So we'll start with the technology audit. There were several recommendations that were made, and so the leadership team reconvened and looked at those. If you recall, there were a few that were already embedded in the FY20 budget, and a few that were actually approved for this year, that we were just waiting for the audit to give us a little bit more background and foundation information on. So those were the data manager position and the one-to-one technology Chromebooks for grade 7. So those were already embedded in the FY20 budget. And so what I have for you in the technology audit implementation are expenses beyond that. And so for recommendation 1 and 2, we're looking to implement one-to-one Chromebooks not only in grade 7 but in grade 8, and also the recommendation from Jeff Sun to implement content-based Chromebooks at the Granby Junior Senior High School, and that would be a cart in the science department, the social studies department, the mathematics department, and the English language arts department, in addition to the specials department. And thanks to David's hard work, there are also 3 functional labs that teachers can use. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, I think 2 of them are Chrome labs.
There's that, there's 3 Windows-based lab and there's 1 Chrome lab.
And there's Chrome capabilities in the library. In addition, in recommendation 1 and 2 was the acquisition of the mobile management system for the new devices. That was embedded in the first presentation of the FY20 budget. Recommendations 3 and...
Do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
Yes, you can stop me at any time.
Okay. So the concept of one-to-one is easier to understand at the elementary level.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go to 7, 8, and beyond, the subjects come in, as you have it listed here. How does it work? What does one-on-one mean? Does everyone get a Chromebook, or does it belong to the classroom these different subjects that you listed, and then they're only used in the context of those subjects.
So our intent would be to model grades 7 and 8 after what the students have experienced here. So they would be walking in to their day, into a homeroom period. They would have their Chromebook in grades 7 and 8 that they are learning to be responsible for and travel throughout the building with. By the time students are in 9 through 12, Jeff Sun's recommendation was for students to have access in classrooms and content.
So not
Not
have
the
one
physical
that-
one-to-one, once they're at that level. And I think part of that is because students are very savvy and often have their own devices, whether it's the phone or iPads, things like that that they're bringing. So I think the recommendation reflected how students are using at the upper levels some of their own technology differently.
So one last follow-up then. How do we know, I'm assuming, because you're saying Chromebook carts in each content area, I'm assuming they are content specific, loaded with content specific things, is
No.
that, no?
No, well, that's to be determined. I mean, that's not the initial plan. The
Okay,
nice thing about Chromebooks is that using the management console, you can push out specific apps to specific devices. So like if a teacher were to identify, or if the administration were to
Okay.
identify a cart and say, I want this cart to have this particular software but not the other carts, yes, that can be done. And it may ultimately happen, but I think right now, we want to get the devices in the hands of the kids, and we want to leverage the power of the G Suite, which is the foundation of the Chrome environment.
okay.
So does that mean that we are not fulfilling the recommendation of 4 carts? Because Jeff's recommendation was 4 carts.
They're 4 carts, but they're not gonna be customized initially to a particular department. In other words, the social studies Chromebooks will be identical to the math department Chromebooks.
And I think that one of the reasons why I was asking, we don't know how many students will be in each content area every year, right? So having that flexibility to be able to push different content to those devices will probably be helpful, as opposed to committing them in certain numbers to different content areas.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of one of the nice things about Chromebooks is a lot of flexibility. I think you stated that. There's a lot of flexibility, so we can get creative. We might end up doing something that we are not even thinking of right now. We might learn something or discover something moving forward.
And I just want to make sure that, I mean, we paid for this audit, and I do
So-
want to make sure that I understand the flexibility and all of that, but if we pay to get a technology audit, and then we're doing something that's slightly different for financial reasons, then I think we need to
So
talk about that.
we're actually implementing the third bullet, which is there are other potential allocation schemes versus carts per floor. These would include the acquisition of several carts per department, i.e. math, science, ELA. So we've decided that allocating carts to the departments, in addition to having lab spaces available, is a way to manage the allocation of carts so that staff and students 9 through 12 have higher levels of access.
Okay, so we are satisfying the recommendation. We're just doing it, we're customizing it
Yes.
for our district.
Exactly, because his recommendation, there are a couple. One was 2 per floor. We feel like as educators, if we can help with the professional development around content in departments, that would be more effective as we balance professional development with integration into classrooms and lessons and units
Okay.
and curriculum.
Just as long as it's
Yeah,
not,
no, it's an
it's
excellent
for
question.
financial reasons, you know, it's
Yep, no, it's
more-
actually
okay,
not.
okay, good.
When we looked at the recommendation, we felt the best way to move forward was in content at 9 through 12.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay, so recommendations 3 and 6. We have, are asking to add to the budget a curriculum technology integration specialist. And that person would work with all staff on designing high-quality curriculum and implementing units of instruction with a specific focus on collaboration, real-world problem-solving, and effective use of technology at the modification and redefinition levels of ISTE standards. I think what the report showed us was that particularly here at East Meadow and where there is access at Granby Junior Senior High School, we are more operating at the substitution, so we take traditional lessons and we kind of substitute digital versions of those traditional lessons, and that's not uncommon. Our hope is that with a curriculum technology integration person whose really whole job is to help shift into those higher levels of implementation, that teachers would have the support they need to make that mind shift, because that's not an easy thing to do. I would also say that when we think back to the targeted review findings, one of the findings, and a significant one, was the lack of integrated curriculum and professional development. That was a very large finding. This position, I think, would help implement the recommendations there from the targeted review and also from Jeff Sun's audit.
And so how does the computer literacy assist with this? Because this was another really big finding in his, there's a gap, a huge gap
Right.
in the computer literacy.
So in working on the leadership team, this is the person that would be leading all of the curriculum writing, all of the unit development, all of the lesson designs, with a specific focus on ensuring that technology integration was at the higher levels of implementation.
And who would this person be reporting into
Me?
directly?
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is a person that would be on the leadership team.
Okay.
And the job description is there. There's a lot more to this position than curriculum and technology integration. It's about implementing the strategic plan with the focus of goals 1, certainly, and 4, and really helping us all move the district in curriculum instruction through professional development, through professional learning communities, through the ILTs, and really having that cohesive focus on curriculum and instruction. And the third piece really is assessment, working with our new assessments, working with MCAS, and helping teachers have the conversation around using assessment effectively to change instruction so that students are learning and growing, not just meeting criteria, but participating in collaborative problem solving, and that eventually will fall over into success on some of the standardized tests where we're not seeing students scoring, for example, at the advanced level that we would want them to be. We talked a little bit about recommendation 7, which is to create the data management position, which we had already done, but the audit certainly confirmed that need for us. Recommendation 11.
And that was already in the budget.
It's already in the budget,
Okay, I
yep.
think that's worth just saying
Yes.
for the camera.
I'm going to talk in general about the recommendations, and then a little bit about the facilities, and then the numbers associated with each of those. So one of the recommendations that we did discuss a lot at the leadership team and came to agreement on was to provide laptops to the Granby Junior Senior High School staff. I know that we had the conversation with Jeff and David about how technology is used here. And the decision has been to allow staff the opportunity to move technology through the building here, and therefore allowing Granby Junior Senior High School students, teachers to have the same opportunities, so that when we're doing professional development around Google Classroom, around these next higher levels of technology integration, people have the tools that they need to learn. So we did go around on that one, but we do feel like for the money, it's a good investment now, and will really carry forward some benefits as we design a professional development and learning community around digital literacy and technology integration.
Do we have it here at East Meadow already?
Yes, so the difference in our learning, currently the teachers were required to leave the computers in the classroom, but Jeff Sun's recommendation is that they are allowed to take those devices with them to meetings. That requires some infrastructure on our part.
It requires some special software to do it properly, which, yeah.
And these are new units, right?
In this building they are.
Yes.
Yes.
And what you're requesting is also new units.
Well, if David can speak to the details of that?
Certainly. The units that we're proposing for the high school are actually refurbished units that come with a warranty that's better than most new computers come with. And they are probably about 40% the cost of a brand new one, so.
But it's not like this one.
Not at all.
Okay.
They have solid state drives, which that one does not. They have considerably more memory, so, but they are, the spec on it is pretty good, but they're probably about, somewhere between 40–45% the cost of a brand new one, and they come with a warranty that is significantly longer than the standard warranty on a new device. The only thing that's not warranted for the full 3 years is the battery on it, but the device, the hard drive, the motherboard, the electronics are warranted for 3 years. I did get some references on this company, and another local school that has purchased refurbished equipment from several other vendors said that, this particular vendor was among the better ones to use for that purpose.
And the software that you're talking about is included in this request as well?
The Granby schools for about the last, I don't know how many years, we like a lot of other schools, we have an annual agreement with Microsoft, and that agreement allows us to install the Windows operating system in Microsoft Office on as many district-owned computers as we have.
Mm-hmm.
So that the budget will continue that agreement with Microsoft for another fiscal year. So that's already accounted for. In terms of antivirus software, that's in the budget, and the mobile device management software that allows us to let people move them around is also in the budget for next year.
Can you just make a note that as of 6:57 we have quorum?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Sorry.
So, does that answer the question? Or?
It does, thank you.
So the cost associated with each of those, the one-to-one implementation for grade 8 at 2 carts is $12,400. The one-to-one implementation for content at Granby at the high school level, which would be 5 carts, is $31,000. The curriculum coordinator, technology integration specialist, we budgeted $85,000. And then the teacher laptops at Granby Junior Senior High School, we budgeted $14,000. So moving on to the facilities reorganization. Yep.
Couple questions.
Yes.
So are we doing high school this year, or are we just going 7-8? So when we say content at high school, does it mean that we are doing the entire school district?
Yes. So basically what we're saying is with implementation of the audit recommendations, we would have full coverage that meets the needs of teachers and students in Granby, which I would like to say is probably the first time since I've been here, certainly. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't relook at 9 through 12. as teachers are using them and implementing them in classrooms and reassess that. But for right now, we would have what I believe to be the technology, hardware and the devices to meet the needs of every teacher and every student.
So if I'm a student, 10th grader next year, my content areas will have these.
Yes.
So here's the question. How do we feel, since all these things are now synchronized in their implementation? The curriculum coordinator and technology, without having a plan in place that the curriculum coordinator will put in place. Is this going to be effective, or should there actually be a lag that you first plan and then based on that plan you start implementing? And it becomes more of a curious question for me because technology gets old very quickly now, right? So we're gonna, and I don't know which way is right or which way is wrong, but just throwing it out there. By the time we really fully get to understand how we should be using the technology, will it already be 1 year old without really making much of a dent in what we're trying to accomplish?
I would say no, because if you look at the use of labs, the Chrome labs or the Windows labs or the Chromebooks in the media center, they are constantly in use. Teachers are asking for the tools. I think we would miss an opportunity if we didn't have the devices and we provided professional development and then teachers can't do anything with it because they don't have the devices to actually implement a Google Classroom. So I would say it's a tandem. To your point, should we have the whole plan first? Potentially, but I think working with curriculum and instruction so that teaching and learning is changing in classrooms, I think that's important, and I think this is the way to do it.
If I can just add a point to that. Also, in Jeff Sund's report, he talks about, planning and a PLC for planning. To get this equipment now. So, there, obviously, I think what I envision is making this first step, getting equipment, like Cheryl said, there's people that are eager to start using it. And then, if we were to move farther down the road, that's where we have the PLCs or we have the admin working with the teachers to determine how we go to step 2 and step 3. But Jeff Sund's report, it didn't say, get a computer and then get the equipment. It kind of had the two things happening together,
Okay. One last question on that section. You mentioned that we would do refurbished computers for the teachers, and I think it makes sense. They still have a lot of use in them, many of those units. Is there an educational program that these large manufacturers are offering? I'm sure you're looking into all these opportunities, but if we went to Dell or HP or these places, do they have an educational program that provides discounts, deep discounts for schools like ours?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for programs out there. I think this is probably one of the most cost-effective solutions, or one of the more cost-effective solutions that's going to give us what we need. Some of these other companies like Dell, they have programs where you can get new stuff from them. Their approach is different. Traditionally, Dell would try to get you to sign on to a lease where you would get new equipment and you would pay, it's usually like 3 years, and then at the end of 3 years, the devices are taken back and you get a whole new batch of brand new equipment. So you're always getting new stuff, but you're paying a lot more for that. So the question I would have is, what advantage does a school get out of it? I don't know of any studies right now that says there's going to be an exponential, increase in learning, with that device that's a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
There's districts that do that, and they're probably justified in how they do that, and and we might find ourselves in a situation down the road where maybe we have to look at some other opportunities. But I looked at an opportunity that was gonna meet our needs in a fiscally conservative manner. That's why
No,
I think the
that's
solution-
always appreciated. I'm just trying to understand all these different options.
Mhm.
So then, what comes to mind is, one, can we show that in some way that, there are all these different options and the other ones are definitely not as cost effective as this one that we're going with, which would be a good way to show that, we're looking into all those options. The other one is, since you mentioned the refurbished, laptops and all that brought to mind, you were able to, and you still are able to get some used laptops for the district.
And
Are
that still will be happening.
But can they be used for this purpose, or are they too old to be used?
I think
for
they're
this?
gonna be, I think that they're gonna be definitely an older vintage. They still have value for us, but I don't think they're gonna have value for this particular purpose. For example, if you're gonna have teachers moving around about the building with a device, the devices that I'm getting donated come with standard hard drives, not SSD drives. And the difference is that the standard hard drives aren't as fast. It takes longer for the machine to come out of sleep mode or to boot up. So the teacher's gonna be going between classrooms, which is gonna be the case at the high school, and they fold up their laptop and they open it up. There's time being lost while that computer reboots if it's an older one versus a newer one that we're talking about buying. There's less time lost. And that was a concern we had in the past. We've had computers with the donated computers. That's why they have to be replaced so frequently, because after they're just a couple years old, with all the security updates for Windows, it slows them down after a while. And you get a situation where students come into a class and they log on, and several minutes go by before they can begin working. So that's several minutes lost each day from every class. And then if they have to share computers where they have to log off halfway through the class and have another student log on, the same thing happens again. So for the teachers who will be, in between classes, rushing around doing that, you don't want to lose, 2-3 minutes of instructional time each day.
Yeah. So I hear you, and I'm a big fan of solid state and all that, but a good chunk of the computers, laptops out there are still not solid state, or you pay on top of that. That's one. The number two thing is, this is for the high school. Where are these teachers rushing to? I mean, don't they have their own classroom at that level to?
Well, for secure, a lot of teachers have their own room. A lot of teachers share rooms. Teachers, even when they have their own room, they sometimes leave the room in between classes for business purposes, so they have to log off or lock the computer. The computer goes into sleep mode for that purpose, even though it hasn't moved. So there's a lot of other considerations there that are happening.
Okay.
What I see as teachers have their own devices is the actual immediacy of using the device. So when they're at an IEP meeting and they can look at their grades, on their laptop. When they're at a grade level meeting and they want to look up something around the topic that's being discussed. When they're at a faculty meeting and they have notes that they want to, I have not ever not had a laptop probably in the last 10 years. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't come to school committee with a device that provides me access at any minute to knowledge, data. And so if we're asking teachers to have access to curriculum, apps that they might be investigating with their colleagues, we need to have the devices effective and efficient for them to do so.
And I have, I'm not questioning whether or not they should have a laptop or not. What I'm asking is, as we are gradually getting into this mode, is there a possibility to use whatever we have in place? Because you've been doing a great job getting all those laptops. If the concern is maybe one boots up a minute later or whatever it may be. Is that something that we can work with as we are building it? And again, for a lot of other things, you build you invest and you buy it and it just stays there for a while. As you just said, some of these laptops, they're here today, 3 years later, there is something else that you need to do to them because.
Well, to answer your question, the donated computers that I am still getting, as a matter of fact, I am going next week to pick up another load, are gonna be utilized. But the reality is that the amount of donated items that we get is not adequate to meet our needs. Even in the absence of the report from Jeff's son, the amount of donations that we are getting will not meet the needs for next year to high school, primarily because all of the devices in that building will not run Windows 10. Windows 7 is being retired in January 2020, and Jeff's son, in his report, said we shouldn't even be running them in September. Okay, the Windows 7 devices in the high school here, contrary to popular belief, cannot be upgraded to Windows 10. The manufacturer on the ones that we currently have, which were donated, and we're very appreciative of the people who donated them several years ago, they will not run Windows 10. They're not certified for it. We've attempted to force an installation on it, and the performance is extremely poor, and they're extremely unreliable. So the result of all those devices going away, the amount of donated equipment coming in right now is probably only going to be adequate to replace approximately less than 50% of the devices that are going away. So even if we didn't want to do anything with that report, if we just relied on donations for next year, if we wanted to stay with Windows-based devices, we would lose about 50% of the equipment in that building.
This is in the lab that you're talking about?
Everywhere in the building. All the lab computers, the office computers, the superintendent's office computer, teachers' room, the ones the students use in the library. All of them are affected by this. And this is something I saw coming, and that's why I was trying to be very aggressive, I shouldn't say aggressive, I should say assertive with getting more donations. And when you get donations, you have to accept what is being given to you. So what was given to us, which we're very happy for, is about enough to replace maybe, I'm just guessing somewhere between 40 and 50% of what's in the building. And all that equipment will be utilized.
Yep.
All that equipment will be utilized.
So, to then wrap this up, so everybody understands, not just me, my curiosity was around all those laptops that you are getting, whether or not they could be used for some of the purposes that we're talking about. What you're saying is, well, those are good equipment, but whatever we have in-house, a large number of them cannot be upgraded with the new operating system, and therefore they need to be retired, right?
Or they need to be used in a limited purpose mode.
Right, because they're not going to be fast enough. And
Well, no, where you would remove Windows from them, and you can use them to run maybe like Google Docs, and I'm not going to morph into that discussion right now, but yeah, for the most part, they need to be retired. They can't run Windows, they can't be used in a computer science room, you can't run Microsoft Office on them, you can't do anything that involves security, like teachers can't use them for, with Windows 7, because there won't be any security patches.
Right.
So,
and I'm not sure how effective it is to really have multiple operating systems in the same network anyway. So it's all good.
yeah.
What you're saying is that when they are retired, yes, we will use whatever new donated laptops we have, but they're going to basically go to replace those currently retired equipment.
Chances are you may walk into one of the computer labs next year, a traditional lab, where the desktops are gone, but in place are laptops. And it's not because we're moving around the building, but that's what was donated to us, and they are capable of running Windows 10, so they're in a computer lab, and a teacher who needs a traditional Windows-based environment can bring students in there and do that. That's one of the options we have.
All right.
There's different options, and I will gladly engage in discussions or presentations in the future if you want more information on that. But we could go on and on about different options and the and the benefits of each and the limitations of each.
Okay. Thanks.
Any more questions about the technology? Okay. So moving on to the facilities reorganization due to shared services termination. We spent quite a bit of time with the leadership team and Adam and myself thinking about the best way to maintain the facilities so that they are safe and that they are functional for staff and students in the community. So we came upon reorganizing how we do facilities by creating a facilities coordinator position and a maintenance technician / custodian position. And in order to do that, we need some equipment. We're looking at a mower and other maintenance equipment. Currently, in shared services, we share a half-time director. We share half of a director. We share half of a facilities maintenance person, and that comes in our local budget. And then on the in-kind, we also share half of a maintenance person. So the in-kind came with a reduction of the half-time maintenance position that was taken off of the in-kind sheet. So that certainly was a benefit to the district. But we have to pick up the cost, the other half of the position. So we're estimating that to be $35,000 in addition to what was currently in the budget, what we're currently paying for the facilities coordinator, and then the maintenance technician and custodian position, we would have to add to the budget $25,000 to make up for the town share that we're currently that they're currently paying. The mower is $15,000, and then the maintenance equipment. I mean, we're talking about weed whackers, leaf blowers.
Sander for the back of the
Sander
truck.
for the back of the truck. I did have a conversation with Chris. The plow truck, which is currently in the school department, would stay with us, and the transit van would stay with us as well. So there aren't any large expenses there.
And as far as the mower, will the town be mowing
Yes.
anything, or?
So in discussion with Chris, the in-kind sheet still has the cost of mowing the large perimeter of the schools. So that is everything from the parking lot to 202, all of that big expanse of field, and all of the big expanses of fields in the back. And we get charged for 10 mowings a year, but DPW is very accommodating, and if there's a special need, they do come out and help us
So
out.
what is this mower for?
So this mower is for actually two. One is a zero-turn mower. You'd think I'd know this coming from a John Deere environment. One is a zero-turn mower for the athletic fields.
Oh, so when you said the town would do the large
Yes.
areas, it doesn't include the...
It does, but in order to keep the fields ready to play, there are oftentimes we have to mow the day before a game. Once a week isn't enough, or once every 10 days is not enough. So the zero-turn mower would allow us to take better care of the fields on game days, or 4 game days, and then a lawn mower to do all of the landscaping, mowing that needs to be done from the parking lot to the building. That would be our responsibility. And right now, that's a shared service, so, you know, Dave or Patrick come over on the lawnmower and do that. Right now, we would have to be doing that. So we need the mower to do that. In addition to the weed whackers and the leaf blowers and those kinds of things. And the sander. So, in total, Emery, because we had the discussion, the additional salaries is $145,000, and the OTPS
Yeah.
which is,
Other than personal services, so anything other than salaries.
anything other than salaries is 82,400, and so the total addition to the school department budget would be $227,400. And if there are any questions now, I'm gonna shift it
Yeah, so
his
I
way,
think the
because we're gonna
critical
talk about
question-
how we're gonna pay for it.
How we're gonna pay for it, before we do that, how we almost wrapped up this conversation last time, whether we're going to the town for additional funds. What's the impact of this to that?
So we don't need to go to the town for additional funds.
Okay.
What it will do is just impact our school choice or sped circuit breaker revenue accounts a little more than we had planned.
So we'll dip into those buffers a little bit and then.
Right,
manage.
and we will still be in a good position having 1 year in arrears in those revolving accounts, which is typically the standard in balances in those
Okay.
accounts. We'll just have a little less than we originally planned, but we don't necessarily have to go to town meeting floor asking for money. We will still have a balanced budget.
Okay, so we're not going to the town floor to ask for additional,
No.
we still have a
We
balance.
still have a balanced budget.
Okay.
So I have a question,
Yeah.
which kind of talks about the technology piece. And I know we haven't even gotten to this because you're buying the equipment, we really don't have the people in place yet, but at some point, we're gonna have to develop a plan, a longer-term plan of how we get rid of old equipment and buy new equipment to replace, to keep up with what's going on. Does not going to the town for money now put that at risk in the future, or are we kind of still okay? Like, I'm a little bit worried that you're saying we still have the money, but we're dipping into the buffers, like, I don't wanna upset things too much, does that make sense?
Yes, no, it's the same conversation we've been having.
Okay,
Yeah,
And
yes.
we've together in the real beginning stages, but have already kind of put together a 5-year projection as to where we will be. And we should be okay as we are right now. A lot of these costs are one-time costs, one-time impact to the budget. But again, in 2 or 3 years, we'll need a recycle plan and we might have to revisit that. So it's certainly a concern, but we have not overlooked that. It's certainly come up in conversation. And I think we're trending the right way between the budget, Foundation Budget Review Commission. We've seen some increased enrollment this year, which we'll see the impact of that in our foundation budget for next year. So yes, we should be okay.
as long as you guys have already thought about it.
Yeah, oh yeah,
talked about
yes,
it,
yes, yep.
I think
I'm okay.
what is important is to remind ourselves that, and you mentioned it early on, let's not lose sight of that. One of the issues that we've been having all these years was that the enrollment was declining. So, one key reason for the enrollment to decline, well, there were many reasons, but, related to this, we were not sure whether or not some folks were seeing opportunities elsewhere to be able to get to, some of the things that they could not get here. With the facilities and with some of the curriculum changes, and this curriculum now really, as we called it in the strategic plan, looking towards that 21st century requirements, marrying the technology and curriculum. Hopefully that trend that we started seeing this year will continue, and as we go forward, the increase in our enrollment will really help us to be able to look into those replenishments that you're talking about. Absolutely, there should be a conversation and there should be a concern. But I am, thinking about the way things turned around and how we are investing in making this school district a school district for future generations of Granby. I'm hopeful that we're going to see that trend continue, and that's gonna continue to pay for all these additional things.
And we're making a huge investment, this year, and we're hopeful that it will give us a pretty good return in
Yeah.
2 or 3 years.
Maybe I didn't say it as well as
Yeah,
you
no,
did.
no, yeah, no, no.
That's
I
great.
was-
The investment this year is
Yes,
basically
I
our
was
investment to make sure that we
agreeing
are
with you,
seeing
yes.
that way.
Yep.
Great,
Yep.
very nicely said. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, and I 100% agree, I think to be honest with you, I think the time is now. We've got this building behind us.
Right.
Now it's time to start looking at what we need to do in the high school to bring
Yes.
that kind of where it needs to be. I just want to make sure that we are thinking long-term as well, like,
Yes.
if we don't do this now, what happens in 3 or 4 years, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, because we all know that our enrollment is only gonna be so.
Right.
It's only
gonna
gonna grow
flat.
so much,
Yep.
and then
Right.
it is going to flatten out.
Yep.
And, you know, sped costs keep going up. So I agree, I have the same concerns, and yet I also believe that we have to invest now in
Yes.
order to,
It's a balance,
yes,
absolutely.
it is a balance. I have no doubt that you all have these conversations endlessly.
I think about 11 o'clock last night.
Yeah, we were, yes, yes.
Yeah,
But also, I think we're still holding out hope that all these conversations that we've been hearing the last couple of years, whether it's related to the foundation budget updates and fully funding school districts, to rural school coalition coming to fruition to benefit, you know, tier 3 districts like
Yep.
ours. When they come together, you know, I'm really hopeful based on certain things that happened this year that we're gonna see a realization that we need to invest in school districts like Granby. We're not, you know, despite the common thinking, we're not really a suburb. We're not, you know, we're not considered rural currently. We're not considered this. But we are really a combination of a lot of things, and we should be benefiting from all those factors that every other school, well, many other school districts, most other school districts are benefiting from. And I think it is coming together now with a
Yes.
lot of good work around that.
So that's what I have.
So my remaining questions, or my questions that remain, I should say, are related to the plan around what we're gonna do with this. This is actually a very good direction. It makes all of us happy that we are now able to look at what we are offering in terms of curriculum and see that we are aligning with how education should be in 2019, right? But that also means that we have to, because we're just getting into it, we have to know where we're going, we have to plan for it, and how we're going to be using that. For instance, if we're going to have all this capability, I would expect that next year something similar to Blizzard Day or Blizzard Bag would include something more than just, here's an assignment and, so
Right.
there's a lot of thinking to be
Yes.
done. If we're going to have all this technology that we're offering to support curriculum, then I would expect that there would be some professional development planned around it. Is it all included in here in this budget that we're seeing right now?
Yes, so there are line items for professional development. The continuation of the ILT through stipends is in the budget. I think what you're getting at is how are we going to leverage the excitement of investing in devices to have it translate into actually changing from a traditional use of just do a worksheet on the computer
Exactly.
to actually being in the Google Classroom and the Google Suite so that learning is asynchronous. Students are able to log in and have dialogue at any time during the day. They're creating and solving problems together. They're communicating at all times. So
real time.
right, and so I think one of our goals as a leadership team is to start to build the professional development and then build the expectation for what does a 21st century classroom look like in the Granby Public Schools.
Yeah.
When we know that one of the most important features about being here in Granby is that we want students who are service-minded, civically engaged. So if those are two very important things for us, how does using technology help us have students in community service projects, have them in civically engaged in the community? So whether it's through the media course for 7th and 8th graders and they're producing content, like all of that opens up for us And then administrators with teachers set a different expectation for what we see when we're in classrooms. And then we give feedback to the teachers, and teachers are giving feedback to the kids. I'm just so excited.
Yeah, there's
I mean,
reason to be excited.
it's like, it's sort of like a perfect storm of, instead of everything being a perfect storm and everything like being in a deficit model, we're in a perfect storm of everything being in a positive model. Like, we actually have the pieces now to do what we need to do.
So having said that, it's gonna be really important for you and your team to be able to deliver this message in a cohesive and succinct way to not only
Right.
the public, through the public forum that's coming up, but also through the all committees meeting. And I don't know, I'm assuming that you've been thinking about this, because this is the important stuff,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That, you know, yeah, there's an additional amount to the budget. We're not asking anything of the town, and yet here's how it's going to, these are the results
Right.
of this 227,000. And then in the larger context, this is how we're moving towards that 21st century. And that, to me, is like exciting, yes, and overwhelming. How do you prepare that message?
But again, it's just it's so much more enthusiastic and empowering to be in a position to say,
Agreed.
where can we be, as opposed to what do we have to cut?
Actually, it's not where will we be, it's, this is where we're going.
Right.
This is
right,
where we're
exactly.
going.
Yeah.
And these are the steps we're taking now, and then these are the steps that we're negotiating for next year and for year 3, and, because I know that's what FinCom wants to see. I know that's what the select
Right.
board wants to see. You know, they want the
Yeah.
narrative, they want to know,
It's obviously certainly a risk because we're rolling out all this technology at once and all this PD, and we need the buy-in from teachers and families and students. So it's certainly a huge risk, but I think we will see 3-5 years from now that it was definitely worth that investment. Now we'll see more maybe choice in our enrollment will increase. I think it's a risk, but it certainly should pay off in the next 3 or 5 years.
In working with the ILTs and working with the principals, one of the things I notice is that teachers are ready. They're ready for mindfulness and self-care. They're excited about that. They're running with that now. They're understanding that component of social emotional learning. They're ready. They have been ready. What's been standing in their way is the lack of professional development and the lack of devices. When we support them, then together we will build the vision of this is where we're going. These are the expectations for a different type of learning that we want to see in classrooms. And, you know, as with anything, we'll have early adopters and we'll have people who want to be presenting to their colleagues, and we'll have people who, you know, will say, I don't have a computer in my house, and we'll say, yeah, now you do, and help them and support them in getting to that place where this is good for kids. This is what kids need.
So when, I guess, when do we expect to see this shift occur? And it's probably not next year. Is it the
September.
year? Well, so you think, okay, and then my next question is, I would think at this point, the staff has to have, you know, a much brighter outlook on, you know, their job, I would think, right? I mean,
Yes. So I sent an email out to the East Meadow staff last week. I came over to East Meadow and I had no intention, which really is not like me. I'm usually, this is learning walk and this is what we're looking for, and, you know, or I'm here for a meeting, whatever. I just came and I just, you know what? I just want to walk through the building. Almost every classroom I was in, students were using the Chromebooks. Projectors in every classroom were being used. In the breakout sessions, students were using the technology, you know, in small groups. They were producing written magazines in one of the classrooms. So it's not as much of a shift as I think we might anticipate. I think it's more of how can we educate our staff around moving into the higher order thinking. And we've been talking about this all along, not just with technology, but with what we actually expect students to be doing in classrooms. So we've been talking a lot about this. Do we see kids collaborating and problem solving? Do we see them engaged in a question designed to motivate them and hook their learning? Or are we seeing students merely completing work and what that difference is?
Have the teachers seen the piece on the audit about teaching computer literacy?
We have not presented the audit yet. We will be doing that at faculty meetings.
That shifted for me when I got a clear explanation of what computer literacy was, this higher order thinking.
Yeah.
That was huge for me. So I really think that would make a big difference, not only for teachers, but for parents, for them to understand, because computer literacy to me meant, you know, how do you flow through the computer? How do you, you know, how do you know how to use, exactly,
Yep.
right? And it really wasn't all that important to me. But to be able to use it in such a way where it's actually enriching your intelligence and how you go about solving problems and figuring things out, it was really mind-blowing to me. And I think that would go along, even if it was just that piece for parents as a way of saying, this is what we mean by 21st century learning for your children.
So all these things that we're talking about is basically change management. So, you know, definitely this is a change in the way we look at the way we introduce things, curriculum, technology, everything is coming together. But, you know, I completely agree. You brought up not only those folks who are within the district day in, day out, but outside will have to be brought up with that same change management. And I think that means a lot of preparation and work, since you mentioned September and Mike almost fell over, but
I thought this was gonna be a multi-year
I was
thing.
being a little
Okay.
facetious, but
Yeah.
we do expect that when we work together to understand and grow our own learning about what digital literacy is and what true technology integration in a classroom is, what truly using Google Classroom is all about, that when we have the knowledge, then it's not so far a leap to actually then create the expectation so that we're measuring, have we seen improvement? Do we see differences in classrooms? Do we see changes in kids and how they're learning and what they're learning?
So
Yeah.
it just seemed
But I
to me.
think documenting that and change management, yes, all
Yeah.
very important, getting,
well, change management is also, again, just going back to planning. You have to really prepare for all these things, and change management starts with awareness and then goes into the buy-in, which is, you know, creating that desire. But almost immediately after that comes knowledge, that really going to that almost epiphany where now, yeah, I wanted this, I knew it was coming, I wanted this, but now it makes sense and I can be the one delivering that knowledge as well.
Now I
That's
understand
a-
why.
Yeah, that's a very important pivotal point, and it really requires a lot of preparation on the part of those who are introducing change. You know, and that's going to be critical for all of us. But I know it's going to, you know, the burden is going to be on our administrative team.
So I think that's what I was asking, because you mentioned that they're already, you know, they like the mindfulness and the, you know, it seems like the staff is ready for this change. The only thing that's holding them back is the tools and the knowledge. And once they have that, then it's so it seems like the buy-in is already there. They're just waiting for those two pieces to fall into place, and then they might run with it, and then it'll just happen faster, right?
I mean, think about it. Someone who previously would say that they did not have any technology in their household, I would expect that they were not exposed, but their parents were not exposed either. So it's not any different if we're not gonna have an opportunity to really bring the parents along and the community along, not only just, school community, but all members of our community, from our seniors to everybody else, and make them part of this. There will be gaps in the way we're trying to introduce education in this town, because it's exactly what we're talking about. We're shifting the way we're talking about things. So instead of now sitting down around the book and, having that conversation, now this is no longer something that we type something on. This is how we learn, but that doesn't mean anything to folks who have not been exposed to this. We have to really invest in that education as well. Not just, giving the kids this and then, hey, you know what, go home and, you're gonna be using this. Then it's those are silos. Then these are pieces of equipment. This is what we are showing you. Go home and type something and bring it back tomorrow. We want more than that, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what are we expecting on Monday? Are you going to have all this now visualized to share with members of the public? Okay. How are we communicating that event?
It was advertised as required.
Okay. But in terms of reaching,
It's on our website. I can certainly request another all-call to the community.
Okay.
Sooner rather than later, just for planning purposes.
Now, does that have a cost to it? I just don't know.
Actually, I thought the first one included the date of the public hearing, but I'll see if I can do another
And
one.
will there be childcare?
can NHS
Mhm.
help?
And did you reach out to the PTO? Because they have their own little network of,
Yeah, PTO. And they might be able to facilitate the childcare too, right?
they might.
Mhm.
Or maybe NHS or,
Mhm. Yeah,
that's
Stephen
what they
usually
usually
takes care of that.
yeah.
Any other questions?
So bottom line is, the numbers changed. We have to buy some more stuff, but we still don't need to go to town meeting asking for more money, and we're still in a decent spot longer term, as far as you can see right now.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to sum it up
Yeah.
real quick.
I think it changed the conversation that we were gonna have at that joint meeting anyway. We were gonna talk about, in the absence of this, we were talking about really building the buffers, so when we get to this, how are we going to be prepared? Now we're saying, we are
We did
going
it.
into
Yes.
this,
Yeah, we
the
did it,
buffer's
yeah.
gonna be possibly a little smaller, but we are still saying, we're not going to the town floor to ask for additional funds. So we shifted the timeline in a way because of
Right.
the technology audit and everything that happened recently.
And do we think this is a trend with the town that's gonna happen more over the next few years, where they're gonna shift more of that in kind, onto us?
I
Or
don't
is this
think so.
about
The
the
shared
way-
services certainly was a big change,
Yeah.
but we don't have any other shared services. And in-kind is pretty standard. It's, the charges on the in-kind don't fluctuate a huge amount. So it's cost of insurance and some
At least the items remain the
incidental.
same,
Right,
right?
the
So
items
it's-
remain the same. We'll see a little bit of an increase with some increased staff. It doesn't, it's actually a really good question, and to be more specific, we can do a, 5-year past, what the in-kind costs have been. And that might be a good,
We started that too, didn't we?
we did start it,
It
yep.
just seemed to me that when I
Yep.
glanced at the number, it looked really close to what it was last year, but then we had these additional costs. I
Right.
don't know how that fluctuates, so.
Yep.
And it could have been off some money, but to me, it was
Mhm.
2.1 something, right?
Right, it was very close, and one of the reasons was, because originally we had some reduction in staff, so that the school allocation on the in-kind went down a percent or so, and that resulted in some savings. So, depending on how many staff you have, where they are in you know, I know. I'm tired,
been a long
sorry.
meeting.
It's been a long meeting, but anyway, the school allocation changes a little bit, and sometimes that's the reason for the change
Yeah,
in,
it's percentage based, so they apply a
Right.
certain percentage to each cost.
right,
And then the shared thing that's now seems to be
Yes.
split. I had heard that in some ways that wasn't really working that great for us in some ways to begin with, so
yeah, so on our side.
this isn't really.
Yeah, from our perspective, it was working. I certainly didn't have any issues with it. The only thing that we had discussed, Adam and I, was the potential, because Adam came on board, was to remove supervision of custodians from the position, which would allow the director to be more hands-on in some of the facilities and maintenance piece. So from our perspective, it was working.
Okay.
So I never really heard what the concern was,
So maybe we can.
that would be
talk-
something to
right,
investigate.
Talk about that when we're all together.
Yeah, I just know this came up a few times over the last few months, and it wasn't really that big of a shock to me when I read the email. I'm like, oh, okay.
Right,
But I think I just want to understand that just a little bit more. That's
Yep.
all.
Question I forgot.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Oh, for Monday's meeting, this being the last meeting in March, I don't know if it's included, but just for the agenda that popped in my head, completely unrelated. We were gonna have some briefing on that wellness committee conversation on, did it happen, so we can have something at this meeting? Because it was gonna happen in February, it got canceled and.
right. I know the wellness committee met, so I will touch base with Nancy.
Okay, and it was gonna be with, the participation of
Yep, students. and-
folks, yeah,
Yep, yep.
alright. Anything else? Alright, thank you both very much, actually, thank you, Dave.
Yes, thank you, David.
Thanks,
a big
everybody
plus for
who
David.
got involved in this, yes, there's a lot of great stuff in there. We're gonna continue the conversation on Monday, and hopefully we're gonna see everyone at the, public hearing. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
And the public hearing is at what time?
6:30.
6:30, Monday, March 25th at 6:30, here at the East Meadow Library.
And childcare will be available.
Yes.
Yes. Deanne personally will
Watch all the kids.
watch all the kids.
I'll bring my 3.
I'll just bring a lot
You
of
just
sugar.
offered it, that's what we heard
Oh, the wellness
Cookies
policy.
you say. Isn't that what she said? Childcare will be available, so. All right,
So I'll make a motion.
Sugar
thank
just
you.
for your
Is there a
kids.
second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.